All right, so we get the side panel off, and you have a bolt here, one down here on the lower section, and you have one hidden up under here, and you have the top bolt here in the top fairing. This is a screw on mine, and these are probably 8 millimeter, I'm guessing. I use a small 5/16 socket that fits on there perfect, and took those out. And so now we're going to do the same thing on the other side and take the tank loose. All right, hope you can see okay over here. I got the tank unbolted back here. Got the side panel all off here. I like to put the bolts back where they go if possible, so no chance of losing them, or less chance of losing them. So now we're going to pull the fuel hose off here, off the petcock, make sure it's off. And there's a little vent hose back behind it. So we're going to get those two off out of the way. This crash bar is a little bit in the way, so you can't really see it very well. So I'm going to get those pulled off, see if we can get ready to get this tank out. Unfortunately, this tank is full of gas. Yay. So we'll get that off and out of the way. Okay, so I went ahead and moved the fan. I took the bolts, the 3 bolts out that held it. I moved the fan up here and just tied it up out of the way. And then around on the other side, I took the sending unit plug off. I loosened the spark plug after blowing that out really good with air, trying to get all the dirt and debris that was packed in there. There was a lot of mud and dirt kind of down in that part of the motor near the spark plug. So I blowed that out with air really good, and I actually took a pick and ran around the spark plug a few times to try to get all that debris out. And I left the spark plug in and took this bolt out here that for this I think it's an airline of some type. I took that out and took this out. Leave your spark plug in, because that bolt right there fell off and would have fallen right down in the spark plug hole. So leave that bolt off, or leave the spark plug in when you take that bolt off, or you might have some real issues. So I got that broke loose. I had to spray a little WD-40 down here on this end to break this loose. That was stuck on there pretty good, so I'm going to pull this off, and then I think I'm going to probably go ahead and pull this hose off too, just to get it out of the way, and then we'll be ready to take the 4 bolts off on the valve cover. Alright guys, so I have the 4 bolts out. It's 12 millimeter bolts there. I tapped it with a hammer, little plastic hammer that I have to kind of pop everything loose, so it seems to be loose. So let's see if I can do this one-handed. Get this over the cams. Ugh. All right, I'm gonna have to play with this with 2 hands to get this out, but so there we get a look in there and see what all is there. So, all right, let me grab 2 hands and we'll pull this out and get to the valve adjustment, or the valve check, I should say. So I was able to wiggle the valve cover out. Just watch your gasket. My gasket kept wanting to get hung up. The gasket that goes around this part of the head here kept wanting to get hung up on the chain guide. So we got it off now. Now we're going to move around to the other side. And we're going to take these 2 covers off here so we can see the timing marks and be able to roll the motor over to get to top dead center and everything, get it in the right settings to check the valves. So next you'll want to get your motor to top dead center, and that will be with the valve lobes pointing opposite of each other. And I don't know if you'll be able to see in here or not, but there's a little notch right here in the case, and there's the mark, a line with a T. So you'll rotate this counterclockwise until you get that T and both the lobes facing the opposite direction. I'll take you around on the other side and get a better view of it. All right, so see, you can see the lobes pointing in the opposite direction, and that's where you can take your measurement, and that's what we'll do next. Okay, on the exhaust valve, it can be from 0.15 millimeters to 0.25 millimeters. Mine at 0.15 fits in super easy. So mine are in spec, but I tried a 0.18 and it didn't want to go in very well. So mine's on the tighter end of being in spec, but it is in spec. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. I'm going to note what my settings are right now and then probably check them again in a few thousand miles and see if they've tightened up anymore. If they have tightened up, we're going to have to replace the shims on the exhaust side. So now let's check the intake side. Let me check that setting of what that measurement is. All right, guys, so the intake should be 0.10 millimeters, which is fine on this side, but is tight on the other valve. I can get it under, but I have to force it. I feel like it's a little too tight. So I'm gonna have to see what size shims these are. And I mean diameter wise, I have some shims, but they were for Suzuki. So let me see if I get lucky enough that they are the right size shims. Okay, since the valves are too tight, we're gonna have to remove the cams. So what we have to do first is loosen the cam chain tensioner, and you loosen this center bolt, but you don't take it out all the way, just loosen it, and then you take these two smaller bolts out to remove the chain tensioner. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, now that I have the chain tensioner removed, I'm going to remove the two bolts here on the right side exhaust and intake. I'm going to go ahead and I believe I'm going to go ahead and see what shims are under both, so that way I can just. I haven't decided yet. I might just do just the intake side. Take these two bolts off, these two bolts back here, and get ready to take the shims out. One other thing, when you do it, don't just take one bolt out. Alternate back and forth as you're loosening these up to take them out, and then do the left side. Don't just take one bolt out, then the next bolt out. Alternate back and forth as you're breaking those loose. Okay, guys. Next, you want to take out the chain tensioner cover, which there's a small. I don't know if you can see it there. Small bolt that I already took out. Be careful not to drop that down anywhere in there. And then you'll loosen up the two bolts that are right here on the cover and carefully slide that out. We're going to just set that right over here. All right, so now that we have that out, we should be able to lift the cams up. What I did just to help me out was I marked the cam here and here with just a little bit of touch-up paint just to kind of mark those where I know the chain is lined up, so then I'll know that that's the right count going around. I'm sure we'll have to do all that in a little bit. If you see, you have some marks here on the gear, has an arrow pointing in, and that one I think just has what I can see over here. I left my flashlight, and has an arrow pointed that way, and a flat line here, that needs to match up with the lines on your case. All right, so we're gonna pop this up. I'm probably gonna try to leave everything on there and see if I can just pop that shim out to see what size it is, and then just set everything back down so it stays in place instead of taking the chain completely off and all of that. So trying to save a little bit of steps here and make it a little easier to put back together. All right, guys, what I did was I put a magnet on top of this shim bucket and it pulled it right out, and then just very carefully wedge something underneath of there to pop your shim out. And on the underside, you should have a number on it. This one's a 270. So now I have to figure up what size I need to loosen that valve up some. So that's a 270 on this one. So I'm just going to put it back on there for now, clean this up, and we'll do some figuring. I'm not real good at math, but we'll figure out what size shim we need to go on here. I know I don't have any shims this size, so we're either going to have to order it or call around to shop and see if anybody has these shims. All right, guys, what turned into a simple valve check is turning into some major work. Ran into another problem here on this bike. I noticed when I had this thing mounted up here on the lift and I had the strap around this front crash bar, that as I was working, I noticed this bolt right here had popped out. It's like, what in the world? So I got to look in here, and the bolt is broken off. Here's the head of the bolt, and of course it's broken off flush in the frame. So now what I did was I unhooked the exhaust back here, loosened the bolt up down here on the subframe, kind of pulled this back with a strap, just holding it kind of back so I can get to it. And what I'm going to have to do is drill that out. So more work. But like I said before, it's better to find this stuff out now than when it's too late. So I want to have this crash bars, oops, sorry, it fell. Crash bar protection on here. I'm trying to locate a shim. What I went ahead and did is I went ahead and pulled out the front exhaust shim, and the shim that is in the exhaust is the shim I need for the intake. But so I need to, what I'm going to go ahead and do, since these were right at the tolerance, was 0.15 millimeters, I'm going to drop these down. These had 165s in it, and this had two 265s. This had 270s. So if I put the 265s back in the intake, that would put that in spec. And if I put 260s in the exhaust side, that should bring it down where those are still in spec, but on the looser side, which valves tend to tighten up over time. So I would rather have these loose, because I know the next time I go to check the valves, I'm going to have to probably put shims in the front, or in the exhaust. I shouldn't say front, in the exhaust. So I'm trying to locate some shims. So hopefully I could pick those up today, get this taken care of, but it is Monday and most shops are closed and I have a meeting to go to. So I'm going to see what I can find out, and hopefully we can get that squared away. Hopefully I can get this bolt that's broken off in here drilled out and get this bike back to where it should be, safe to ride and no issues in case we were to drop it. Wouldn't have an issue there. So that's kind of where we're at. Just wanted to fill you in on what's going on. So I'm going to have to take this crash bar, the right side crash bar, all the way off, or at least unbolt it enough where I can get out of the way so I can drill in straight in here and hopefully get that bolt out. So that's the plan. So let's get on it. All right, guys, we're going to reset the spring tensioner here. So what I did was I removed the spring and everything from the housing, and And I've never done this before, but this is what I'm getting from the book, that you depress the spring tensioner all the way in. Then you mount this on the bike. It would go this way. And then you put the spring and the washer and everything on once it's on the bike. And I'm guessing that when it puts the pressure inside, it pushes the spring tension out to where it needs to be against the chain. So we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and put this back on the bike, and then we'll put the spring and the washer inside of it. All right, so we got the spring tensioner in. We're going to slide the spring in, get that to seat in there. You can hear the tensioner going out, and I can see the chain getting tighter. Oh, I don't know if you can see. I might have to do this with two hands, so I'm going to put the camera down for a minute. Okay, so I've got the chain tensioner in. I can see that the chain tightened up here. Check my marks. I don't know if you can see, my marks look good there. Let's check the top dead center mark. And that looks to be pretty much dead on. So we'll tighten that down in a minute, but we're going to put the, I'm going to check the book, follow the cam, put the cam bolts back in. I did put the shims back in it, and I'll tell you what I did with the shims in a minute. Okay, so now I inserted those bolts, torqued them down to 10 Newton meters, the two outside bolts here. So now I got to check what the torque is on the inside nut. Okay, hope you can see this all right. This smaller bolt here, I put Loctite on it, and that gets torqued down to 8 Newton meters. So we do that. Okay, now I'll put the caps on, and I just finger tighten them all down, made sure I had the dowels in the right place. So now we're going to slowly torque these down in a crisscross pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to torque them down slowly to 12 Newton meters. So I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. All right, guys, I wanted to recap a little bit about what I did on this valve adjustment. I had to take this on and off a couple times because I ran into a couple issues, but let me first go over what I did. I changed the front two shims to 0.260, and I changed the rear, took the 65s that were in the front, put them in the back, so that loosened up the intake side, loosened up the exhaust side, and then I had to put everything back together. And when I did, let me go around here to the other side. I had lined up the cams, and when I put it back together, rolled it over by hand, everything was off. It was like the cams were off a tooth. And I knew when I was pulling the shims out that I accidentally popped the chain off of this front gear. So I guessed it having it right, which I had lined the marks up, but when I put the tension on the chain tensioner here, it shifted everything back. And so I was off a tooth. So I had to take it all back apart again, pop this off, play with them a little bit back and forth to get them to line up. What I found out doing this is you could get it right and then tighten everything down, put the cam chain tensioners in, and it would shift everything. So what I did was I lined the cams up where I thought they were supposed to go, and I just stuck my finger in there on the chain and rotated, put pressure on the chain till it rotated the cams to see if I had them properly aligned before putting everything back together. And when I did that, everything was off again. So I adjusted it a little bit more, did it again, got everything to line up when I put tension on the chain. So then when I put it all back together, everything seems good now. So this is the first time doing this particular motor, and so it's not going to be dead on perfect. One may be a little ahead of the other one or a little behind, but you want to get them as close as possible. It's got such a long chain and so many stacks of gaskets and everything else in between, it might throw that off just a little bit. So I think I'm done with the valve adjustment. All I got to do is put the valve cover back on, and I'll do that in a minute and torque everything down. But I hope this helps you on your valve adjustments on your KLR 650. And I have more videos to come on this bike. I'm going to deal with the broken bolt in the frame. And I went ahead and bought Eagle Mike's frame kit to change out these bolts when you're using the SW Moto crash bars. So I'm probably going to do a video on that next. So thanks for watching. I know there's a ton of videos out there on KLRs and how people do it, but I think the more people put videos out there, you may come across little tips here and there that help you. And, it might, maybe somebody explains it away. It's more, uh, it fits your needs more. So the more videos we have out there, the better. So I hope you like this. Please like, subscribe, and we'll have another one to come. Thanks.